Welcome back to Sand and Shadows, the home of deep Dune lore, bold theories, and cinematic storytelling from the farthest reaches of the desert. If you're here, you already know that Denis Villeneuve's Dune is not just science fiction. It's prophecy, philosophy, and power wrapped in the sands of Arrakis. And now, as we look ahead to Dune Part 3, the adaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune Messiah, we step into the shadow of the Savior himself. The story of Paul Atreides doesn't end with triumph, it ends with tragedy. Today, we're diving deep into what Dune 3 will explore: the rise and fall of the man once hailed as the Messiah, the political chaos that consumes his empire, and the price humanity pays for worshipping a god made of flesh. At the end of Dune Part 2, Paul Atreides stood victorious. The Emperor knelt before him. The Harkonnens were broken. Chani watched in silence as the man she loved became something unrecognizable. Paul claimed the throne, and in doing so, claimed a destiny he could never escape. But the story of Dune Messiah begins not in glory, but in decay. 12 years have passed since Paul became Emperor of the known universe. His Fremen armies have spread across the stars, carrying out a jihad in his name. 60 billion people are dead. Entire planets have burned in the name of Muad'Dib. And Paul, the once reluctant savior, has become the center of a galactic religion that terrifies even him. Paul's empire is built on faith but maintained through fear. He lives surrounded by worshippers and conspirators, priests and assassins. He is the emperor, yet he is utterly alone. Every choice he makes ripples through the universe like a stone dropped into a bottomless well. He has seen all futures, yet cannot escape the one that brings ruin. This is the curse of prescience: to know every possible path and to know that all of them lead to suffering. Chani, the fierce Fremen woman who once represented freedom and love, now lives as a shadow in Paul's court. She hates the title concubine. She hates the priests who chant Paul's name as if it were divine. She hates what the jihad has done to their people, turning the once proud Fremen into zealots and conquerors. Paul loves her, but their love is poisoned by the weight of destiny. He refuses to give her the child she desires, afraid that bringing new life into this world will seal the horrors he foresees. And so their bond frays, little by little, under the weight of prophecy. Irulan Carino, Paul's official wife and the emperor's daughter, plays the part of the dutiful consort, but she is neither loyal nor idle. As a Bene Gesserit, Irulan is bound by oaths to the sisterhood whose breeding program Paul destroyed by being born male instead of female. Her marriage to Paul was meant to secure her father's dynasty, but Paul has never touched her. He loves only Chani, and Irulan's resentment festers. Working in the shadows, she writes histories that glorify Paul while secretly collaborating with his enemies to undo him. Those enemies are many: the Bene Gesserit, the Spacing Guild, the Bene Tleilax, and the surviving great houses. All have lost power because of Muad'Dib. Together, they form a council of conspirators. Their goal is not simply to kill Paul, but to annihilate his image, to unmake the god, to turn his legend against him. They understand that if you strike down a Messiah, his myth only grows stronger. But if you corrupt him, make him seem mortal, flawed, and broken, then even gods can bleed. To execute their plan, the conspirators turn to the masters of biological manipulation, the Bene Tleilax. And from their twisted science, they bring forth a gift: a man Paul once loved as a brother, Duncan Idaho. Killed defending Paul's family on Arrakis, now reborn as a Gola, a clone grown in a vat and implanted with artificial memories. His new name is Hate, a word that carries both pain and irony. Hate is sent to serve Paul as a gesture of peace, but beneath that gesture lies the true plan. The Tleilax have programmed Hate to kill Paul, triggered by a psychological command buried deep within his mind. When Paul sees Duncan again, he is shaken. This man looks, moves, and fights like his old friend, but he is not Duncan. Or at least, not yet. It is one of the cruelest tricks ever played on him, to take the memory of his most loyal companion and twist it into a weapon. But this weapon begins to change. Over time, Hate's old memories start to resurface, and the real Duncan Idaho begins to fight his way back through the haze. That conflict between creation and self-awareness will become one of Dune 3's most powerful emotional threads. Meanwhile, Irulan continues her quiet betrayal. She cannot kill Chani, but she can stop her from bearing children. She doses Chani's food and drink with contraceptives derived from spice, ensuring Paul will have no heir. It's an act of jealousy, but also duty, because an heir born of Chani would be pure Fremen, uncontrollable by the Bene Gesserit. To them, such a child would threaten the entire political balance of the Imperium. Paul's empire begins to crumble from within. The Fremen no longer resemble the desert warriors he once led. Many have grown soft, corrupted by luxury and power. The holy war that was supposed to free the oppressed now enslaves others. And the voice of Muad'Dib, once a call to liberation, echoes across the stars as the sound of conquest.
Paul, haunted by visions of countless futures, begins to lose his grip on reality. His gift of prescience becomes a curse of omniscience. He can see too much. Every decision he makes feels like walking a razor's edge between two apocalypses. And through it all, one truth haunts him: the jihad cannot be stopped. Even if he abdicates, even if he dies, the machinery of faith will keep moving. The name Muad'Dib has become bigger than the man who bore it. And then, the visions grow darker. Paul sees Chani's death. He sees betrayal and blindness. He sees the sands swallowing him whole. Yet he cannot look away, for every future he tries to avoid leads to the same ending. The end of him, the end of love, the end of the illusion of control. As his sight fades, Paul begins to go literally blind, struck by a nuclear assassination attempt disguised as a religious ceremony. The conspirators failed to kill him, but they rob him of his eyes. Yet in a moment of haunting beauty, Paul continues to see, through his prescience alone. He walks the world guided by visions of what is, what was, and what must come. But the physical world becomes distant to him, abstract, like a memory slipping through his fingers. Paul's blindness mirrors his inner decay. He is still worshipped as a god, but feels more human than ever, fragile, flawed, uncertain. He confides in Hate, who by now has become Duncan once again, and their conversations are heavy with sorrow. Paul tells him that every vision feels like drowning in sand, that even victory feels like failure. Duncan, the resurrected friend who should have been his comfort, becomes the reminder that nothing Paul loves stays pure. Then, Chani becomes pregnant, despite Irulan's interference. Paul's prescience shifts. He sees new futures open before him, filled with hope and terror. He knows what's coming, the birth of twins, but he also knows what it will cost. Chani's death is written in every vision. He cannot save her, no matter how desperately he tries. This is the cruelest paradox of his power, the ability to see every possibility except escape from pain. Chani's pregnancy rekindles the love between her and Paul, but it also drives Irulan into despair. For the first time, Irulan begins to question her loyalty to the Bene Gesserit. She sees the damage her choices have caused, and when Chani eventually gives birth, Irulan helps deliver the twins, Leto II and Ganima, witnessing the true continuation of the Atreides line. But Chani dies in childbirth, and Paul, who has endured war, betrayal, and prophecy, finally breaks. In her death, he sees not just the loss of his lover, but the death of the last part of himself that was still human. The jihad continues. The priests chant his name, but the man behind the mask is gone. Paul's final act is one of defiance and surrender intertwined. The Fremen tradition says that when a man becomes blind, he must walk into the desert and let Shai Hulud judge his worth. And so Paul does just that. He leaves his empire, his children, and his mother behind, walking into the endless sands. The god of the galaxy disappears into the dunes, a man seeking peace in the silence of the desert. His legend becomes immortal. The myth of Muad'Dib outlives the man. In his absence, Alia Atreides, Paul's sister, becomes regent. The child born an abomination now rules an empire. She raises Leto II and Ghanima alongside Irulan, who redeems herself through loyalty to the children she once tried to prevent. Jessica returns from Caladan, old and weary, haunted by the choices that doomed her son. And in the quiet moments of reflection, she realizes the terrible truth. All of it began with her decision to bear a son out of love instead of obedience. Paul's rise and fall were set in motion by that act of rebellion. But Paul's death is not the end. It's the transition. The story that begins in Dune Messiah will lead directly into Children of Dune, where his son, Leto II, takes up the impossible burden of humanity's future. Unlike his father, Leto will not run from the vision of destiny. He will embrace it. He will merge with the sand trout, the larval form of the great sandworms, and become something neither man nor God, the God Emperor, a being who will rule for 3,500 years to ensure humanity's survival through the Golden Path, a plan to prevent stagnation and extinction. The irony is poetic. Paul was the Messiah who failed to save humanity because he tried to control it. Leto will save humanity by controlling himself so completely that he ceases to be human at all. The sins of the Father will be redeemed by the Son, but at a cost so great it defies comprehension. Villeneuve has hinted that he might end his Dune 3 trilogy with the beginning of this transformation, showing us that the cycle of sacrifice never truly ends. Dune 3 will not be a spectacle of war like its predecessors. It will be quieter, more introspective, and infinitely more tragic. Where Dune Part 1 was about destiny and Part 2 about revolution, Dune 3 will be about consequence, the consequences of prophecy, of faith, of love, and of seeing too much. It's the story of a man who becomes a god, only to realize that gods are the most cursed beings of all. In the end, Paul's journey is not about power, but about loss. The loss of identity, the loss of love, the loss of self beneath the weight of myth. He is the ultimate tragic hero, a man who wins everything, only to understand that victory itself was the true defeat. When he walks into the desert, he doesn't die as Muad'Dib, Emperor of the universe. He dies as Paul Atreides, son of Leto and Jessica, a man who tried to love, to lead, and to see, and was blinded by it all. Villeneuve's Dune 3 has the potential to become one of the most profound conclusions in modern cinema, a film not about battles, but about philosophy, not about empires, but about the human soul. We will see how the myth of Muad'Dib collapses under the weight of its own perfection, and how faith, when left unchecked, becomes a weapon sharper than any crysknife. And yet, amidst the tragedy, there will be beauty. The quiet loyalty of Duncan Idaho, the wisdom of Chani, who never stopped being Paul's conscience, the regret of Irulan, the sorrow of Jessica, and the rise of Alia, a mirror of her brother's downfall, and the birth of Leto II, the seed of a future both divine and terrifying. Dune 3 will show us that no Messiah is truly pure. Every savior carries the shadow of tyranny. Every vision of paradise is built on sacrifice, and every god, no matter how powerful, is haunted by the human within. So when we finally see Paul Atreides walk into the desert for the last time, it won't be an ending. It will be the echo of a beginning, the whisper of a new prophecy taking shape beneath the sand. Because on Arrakis, nothing ends. It only transforms. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the future of Dune, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Sand and Shadows for more explorations into the mysteries of Arrakis, the Bene Gesserit, and the legacy of the Atreides. The spice must flow, but so must the stories. This has been Sand and Shadows. Until next time, walk without rhythm and beware the desert's silence.